In Lesson 7.5, you will be adding and subtracting polynomials. You will add and subtract polynomials by combining like terms. Let's go ahead and get started with first adding polynomials. So we're going to add this polynomial and this polynomial together. It really is no different than combining like terms like we did earlier in the year. Since this has a plus sign in between the two polynomials, you really don't need to worry about changing anything. We're going to go ahead and just find like terms. So I'm going to go ahead and look for the x squared family. We have 2x squared here, and right here we have a negative 4x squared. Remember, you have to include that sign in front of it because subtracting 4x squared is the same thing as adding a negative 4x squared. Now when we put these two together, 2x squared plus a negative 4x squared, that's going to be a negative 2x squared. Now, do not confuse this with multiplying like we did earlier in Chapter 7. It's still going to be x squared because we're not multiplying x squared times x squared. We're just adding these together. So you're just adding the coefficients, 2 plus negative 4, and keeping the variable part exactly the same. Now I'm going to move on to the x term, and you can use a different color or a different shape. We have a positive 5x, and that's going to be combined with this positive 6x. Positive 5x plus positive 6x is a positive 11x, so plus 11x. And then we have our constant term. We're going to go ahead and put our negative 7 together with our positive 3. Negative 7 plus positive 3 is negative 4, so we're going to say minus 4. All right, in our next example, we have these two polynomials being added together. I'm going to go ahead and start by looking for like terms, and I'm going to start with the one with the greatest degree. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the y to the thirds. We have a positive y to the third. If there's no number in front of the variable, you may want to put the 1 there so you don't forget to include it. And then that's going to be joined with the 2y to the third, and it's a positive 2y to the third. So 1y to the third plus 2y to the third is 3y to the third. Now I'm going to move on to the y squareds. I have a positive 4y squared, and there's no others, so I'm going to go ahead and just put plus 4y squared. Now I'm going to move on to the y's. We have a positive 3y and a negative 4y. 3y plus a negative 4y is a negative 1y, or just minus y. And the last thing we have is the constants. We have a negative 5 and a positive 8. When we put negative 5 and positive 8 together, negative 5 plus 8, that's going to be positive 3, so plus 3. Now you may want to pause the video and try the next two on your own. I'm going to go ahead and start with the term with the largest degree. So I'm going to put this 1y to the fourth and this negative 2y to the fourth together. So 1y to the fourth plus a negative 2y to the fourth is a negative 1y to the fourth, or just negative y to the fourth. And then let's move on to the y to the thirds. We just have this positive 2y to the third, so plus 2y to the third. Now on to the y's. We have a negative 3y and a positive 2y. When I put a negative 3 plus 2, that's a negative 1, so it's going to be negative 1y or minus y. And then on to the constants. We have a positive 7 and a negative 11. So 7 plus a negative 11. 7 plus a negative 11 is going to be a negative 4, so minus 4. In our next example, I'm going to start with the x squareds. Positive 5x squared and a negative 3x squared. When you add those together, 5 plus a negative 3 is 2x squared. Now I'm going to move on to the x term. I have a negative 3x and a positive 6x. Negative 3 plus 6 is positive 3, so it's going to be plus 3x. And then now on to the constant term. We have a positive 4 and a negative 3. Positive 4 plus a negative 3 is a positive 1, so plus 1. Now subtracting polynomials is a little bit trickier. When you subtract polynomials, you are subtracting everything that is over here. Remember, subtracting is really like adding the opposite. So we want to rewrite this before we start by changing everything in this second set of parentheses to the opposite of what it was. So I'm going to go ahead and write down 3 minus 2x plus 2x squared. Now everything here is going to get changed to the opposite. So instead of being a positive 4x, it's going to be a minus 4x or negative 4x. And this minus 5 is going to be changed to a positive 5 or plus 5. And the positive 3x squared is going to change to minus 3x squared. So your very first step when you're subtracting polynomials is to change everything here to the opposite. Now it's just like what we were doing above. We're going to look for like terms. I'm going to start with the term with the greatest degree, so I'm going to start with the x squareds. I have a positive 2x squared and a negative 3x squared. So 2 plus a negative 3, that's going to be a negative 1 or negative x squared. Now I'm going to move on to the x's. I have a negative 2x and a negative 4x. So negative 2 plus negative 4 is negative 6x. And now the constants. I have 3 and I have positive 5. 3 plus 5 is 8, so plus 8. So negative x squared minus 6x plus 8. Now in our next example, since it's subtraction, we're going to change everything in here to its opposite. So 7p plus 4p to the third minus 8. And then this positive 3p squared is going to become minus 3p squared. The plus 2 is going to become minus 2. And the minus 9p is going to become plus 9p. Now I'm going to look for like terms, starting with the p to the third. We have a positive 4p to the third, and we don't have any other p to the third, so we're just going to write down 4p to the third. Now we'll move on to the p squareds. I have a negative 3p squared, and I don't have any others, so I'm just going to write minus 3p squared. Now I'm going to put the p's together. I have positive 7p and a positive 9p. 7p plus 9p is 16p. And now go ahead and put the constants together. Negative 8 plus a negative 2. Negative 8 plus negative 2 is negative 10. You may want to pause the video and try the next two on your own. Since it's subtracting, I'm going to change everything to its opposite. So 4x to the third minus 3x squared plus 6x minus 4. Now everything in here is the opposite, so instead of negative 2x to the third, it's going to be positive 2x to the third. And the plus x squared is going to become minus x squared, and the minus 2 is going to become plus 2. Now we're going to look for like terms, starting with the x cubed. We have 4x to the third and positive 2x to the third. 4 plus 2 is 6, so 6x to the third. And then move on to the x squareds. Negative 3x squared and negative 1x squared. Negative 3x squared plus negative 1x squared is negative 4x squared. Now move on to the x's. Positive 6x, and that's it, so plus 6x. And then on to the constant terms. We have a negative 4 and a positive 2. Negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2, so minus 2. And now our last one. Again, it's subtracting, so change it to the opposite. So it's going to be 8y minus 10 plus 5y squared. Instead of a positive 7, it's going to be minus 7. Instead of minus y to the third, it's going to be plus y to the third. And instead of plus 12y, it's going to be minus 12y. Look for like terms, starting with the x to the third. We have a positive, not x to the third, y to the third, positive y to the third, and nothing else to go with it. Then move on to the x squareds. We have 5, I said it again, I meant y, 5y squared, and that is by itself as well, so plus 5y squared. Now we're going to move on to the y's. We have positive 8y and a negative 12y. 8 plus a negative 12 is negative 4y. And now our constants. We have negative 10 and negative 7. Negative 10 plus negative 7 is negative 17. Our last example. So an electronics store is starting to track sales of cell phones and digital cameras. The equations below represent the number of cell phones P and the number of digital cameras C sold in M months. Write an equation for the monthly sales T of phones and cameras. Well, the monthly sales, or the total monthly sales T, is going to equal the phones plus the cameras. So the phones plus the cameras. 7M plus 137 plus 4M plus 78. Now we could simplify that a little bit by putting like terms together, and we get the total sales is going to equal, we can put the 7M together with the 4M, so 7M plus 4M, that's going to be 11M, and then we can put the positive 137 plus the positive 78 together. 137 plus 78 is going to be 215. So here's our equation. Now use the equation to predict the number of cell phones and digital cameras sold in 10 months. So we're going to plug in 10 for M. So we're going to go to our equation and we're going to say the total is going to equal 11 times 10 months plus 215. So we're just plugging in 10 for M. Now when you calculate that, 11 times 10 plus 215, that's going to be 110 plus 215, which is 325. So a total of 325 cell phones and digital cameras will be sold in 10 months.